I grew comfortable with a level of judgment that wasn't comfortable.
You're not Christians.
No.
Am I going to be judged? Am I going to get cancer?
The four horsemen of the producers of our podcast rode into the room and said, are you sure you want to share that?
Rhett and Link recently had a conversation with Rainn Wilson of The Office and Soul Pancake fame, and they talked about spiritual things now on the post side of their very public deconstructing of the Christian faith. Now, we're going to check out some of what they had to say, but I want to use it to examine the whole issue of deconstruction from a couple of important angles. And I'm Brett. I've been a pastor a really long time, and here at One Life, we love engaging these kinds of conversations. So let's check this out.
I think that there is this thing that sort of sits on both of our shoulders, which is coming from the background that we come from, where the old us would be judging the current us for our backsliding and debauchery of no longer being an evangelical Christian. And you think, I've heard you talk about this maybe more than me, which is just like, you never let go of this thing that's like, am I going to be, even if you don't believe, am I going to be judged? Am I going to get cancer? Am I going to lose something?
Oh, like literally like smitten.
Some of that.
So I will be brought to my knees. Now, actually,
Subject number one, keep your eye out on that one, and it'll come up kind of threaded throughout the
I think
entire
that I've heard you talk about that more than I've considered it. But
Yeah, I have a very close relationship with judgment, growing up in an environment of an all-seeing God who was frequently demanding, confession. And I grew very accustomed to that. And then I think over the past decade of moving out of some of those beliefs cognitively, it's still very, it's all baked in here in terms of feeling almost like feeling more comfortable in an environment of judgment. So I'll assume judgment, like from my wife. I care very deeply about what she thinks of me, her opinion of me.
She loves you
She loves me.
so much. You have no idea.
I don't, because I'll project this judgment on her.
She texts me all the time how bad she feels and how, wait a second, this cut off.
Really?
But please, go ahead.
Well, the question becomes, is that necessarily a bad thing, the whole judgment issue?
No. I would welcome her talking to you more often because let her judge you a little bit.
Yeah, really.
No, she doesn't. She's not actually judging me. I just think she is because I felt comfortable in that position. And I think that's the paradox you're talking about in a different way, I guess, is that I grew comfortable with a level of judgment that wasn't comfortable. It's just you get used to it. And then I'm in a space now where I think technically it's not there. I'm not actually experiencing nearly as much judgment as I did in my upbringing.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And is judgment always supposed to be comfortable? That's a good question.
But I'm having to learn how to exercise the freedom that I have in my worldview, if that makes sense.
That does make
That's
sense.
a struggle.
There's so many questions springing to mind, and this is one of the topics I wanted to cover, and we'll jump right in.
We're jumping right in.
Jumping right in to the spiritual deconstruction that you guys underwent 3 or 4 years ago, and you caught a lot of for it. I was reading a lot of stuff online. I was watching a lot of pastors and their articles and videos about y'all like having, I don't want to say leaving the evangelical church, but reassessing your relationship to Christianity. I would say that both of you consider yourselves Christians at this point. No?
No.
Nothing awkward there. Yeah.
No.
You're not Christians.
No.
Okay.
no.
Wow. I missed the boat there. Because I was thinking
We don't go around just saying that all the time. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Christian. There were we'll say it like once a year on our podcast. And when we broke the seal on it, it was over the course
Don't use
of
the word seal. That's in the book of Revelations.
when we broke the 7th seal on it.
The 4 horsemen of the producers of our podcast rode into the room and said, are you sure you want to share that? On the fiery sword of the microphone that you're speaking into. Okay, so
It's kind of ironic and a little funny that he didn't know that about them, but they're that blunt about it now.
That's deep, because that's not really what I got from, I was watching your videos, and I saw it more as like a repudiation of certain aspects of evangelical Christianity.
And it was that.
But could not, being a Christian, have just a love and belief in Jesus Christ and the teachings of the Bible, and be in alignment with, maybe other aspects of Protestantism?
It could, yes.
I was actually excited to talk to you about this.
Okay.
Specifically because it's,
I could tell, because I came in and I was like, have you ever had any tests like this? And you're like, we left the church.
Right. Yeah.
No, just because you're a man of faith.
I am.
And
even though I'm a Baha'i, I consider myself a Christian, because my love of Jesus, and especially, and I've talked about this before with Alex O'Connor and other interviews, like the Red Letter Bible, like what Jesus taught, what he said, what he did, being a little different than what rose up hundreds and hundreds of years after his life.
For sure.
So in
Subject number 2, keep your eye on that one.
that sense, I consider myself a Christian, and the beauty of the teachings and the metaphors and the mythology.
And I would agree with you on that.
The Bible.
So if we're talking about subscription to the teachings of Jesus, then I'm a Christian.
Okay.
But because being a Christian meant something very specific to us, and what we considered a Christian was someone who had, specific faith in the person of Jesus as the offering for our sins, right?
Mm-hmm.
The God in the flesh who sacrificed himself so that we could have a reconciled relationship with God.
Yeah.
Like, that's what a Christian was. And I think that in many ways, it's still kind of what a Christian is to most people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And because that's what it kind of communicates, I say, I believe I agree with the teachings of Jesus. But the person of Jesus, the nature of Jesus, and like what is fiction, what's fact, I'm not really that concerned with what's fact and what's fiction in terms of certain aspects of it, right? I spent a lot of time in that world of like trying to figure out what I thought about that.
Yeah.
But I think that ultimately the rub for me at this point is when it comes to the aspect of faith, it's like I consider myself a theist. I'm not, or at least some kind of, I believe in a source or a force.
I've always thought about when it comes to deconstruction and the people that I've talked to that have confronted that, I understand it, I get it, even have sympathies in that regard, but I always coach people to say, why don't you deconstruct your deconstruction? Because what happens is that you make judgments based on something else. You're looking at the Christian faith and you start picking it apart, but oftentimes we don't back up a little bit and think about how we're justifying our deconstruction. A couple of examples are what they say about judgment and about what they say about Jesus. Again, I get the kind of oversensitive conscience thing and having a rough relationship with grace and everything else. But when you start you could feel the criticism of the church culture. It's very judgmental and all that. But the idea of judgment, no one throws out. No one does. I remember before I was a Christian, we were judgmental. We just weren't judgmental about certain things. We weren't judgmental about one of his partying habits or sexual exploits or any of that kind of thing, but we were judgmental whenever somebody stabbed somebody in the back, or when you betrayed someone, or just were a jerk to somebody. Everybody still had that sense of transcendent moral categories that we appealed to. So where are those now coming from? Because what the Bible does is it celebrates the fact that God is a just judge, that he's pure, that he will judge, and he will make sure that those who are guilty are punished and those who are innocent are not. That's the whole concept, and they used to celebrate that in the Hebrew Bible. They would sing about that, and it's very, very hard to pull that away, because once you do, what are you basing your judgment on? Are you saying all judgment's wrong? Are you saying that all of our right and wrong categories come from society itself? Now that gets over into Jesus. It's fascinating to me. People do this very consistently. They will throw away the Christian faith. They will throw away church culture. And again, I get some of that kind of thing, because some of it is in error and messed up and all the rest, but everybody always wants to retain Jesus. And my question is, first of all, why? Second of all, which Jesus are you talking about? They say very directly here, the teachings of Jesus. From where? In the Gospels? Which ones? And then there's this kind of vague sense that oftentimes we'll say, well, I don't believe the Gospels are accurate. They were kind of put together over hundreds of years, so we're not getting all of his accurate teaching. Okay, well, which one is accurate? Well, it's probably the one like, well, he said to love your enemies. Well, okay, why are you keeping that one as opposed to the others? Because Jesus did talk about judgment. And what if you didn't love your enemies, which most people don't? That's the whole point, is that we tend to hate our enemies. How do we convert over to love? We want that, but that's a judging kind of value that we place on Jesus. We say we're fans of him, but at the same time we reject the other parts of him. And so there ends up being this very strange contradiction. We want to hold on to the nice guy Jesus. That actually, the only reason we really know about him is from the Bible, is from the Gospels. So how are we parsing out where he fits our preconceived notions? And so my challenge to anybody would be, if you're going to deconstruct your own sense of, if you remove the God of the Bible altogether, just remove him, remove Jesus, what are you left with? And can you start there and justify transcendent moral values? Or can you justify even liking Jesus' teachings and wanting to follow him anyway, which is an interesting thing. Now, a couple things I want to send you to. First of all, our friend over at Trinity Radio, Dr. Braxton Hunter, has done some in-depth work on Rhett and Link. So if you want to go down that path, you can. And then also, we talked about this judgment thing from a response to a Christy Burke video. Check that out, and we'll see you next time.